Hi everyone, welcome to the Enterprise App Patterns series of videos. And in this video, we're going to talk about the Reliable Web App Pattern and an overview. My name is Matt Sokup and I'm going to be your guide on this entire Reliable Web App Pattern series of videos. Alright, so just for a second, pretend that you and I are developers on a legacy and tier web application. It could be a monolith, doesn't matter. We are developers on this legacy app, and we are about to go on a journey. And it's going to be a cloud journey, and we're going to take this legacy app, whether it's running in a VM in Azure, whether it's already deployed on an app service in Azure, or whether we have it on-prem. It doesn't matter, but we're going on this cloud journey to get it up and running like in a cloud native session. So our first step that we're going to go on is that we are going to converge to the cloud. And here what I mean is that we're going to go to get our app reliable and secure, and we're going to cost optimize it. We're going to make it great in performance, efficiency, and we're also going to introduce some operational excellence to the application too. So that's our first step in this overall cloud journey. Then next we're going to modernize the app. And then finally, we're going to scale the application as well. So overall, when I introduced this video, I said reliable web apps. That's the converge portion. And that's all we're going to cover is that first box in this series of videos. Modernize and scale, that'll come later. But one thing I want to note, each of these are separate and distinct phases in and amongst themselves. And if we would stop at any one of these phases, we would have a production-ready application that's good to go, ready to be deployed, and it's going to be perfect for the cloud. So it doesn't matter if we decide to stop at converge or we decide to stop at modernize or scale, we are good. All right, so let's talk about where we're going here. First off is the reliable web app pattern or converge. And so when I say pattern, I'm talking about patterns in the way that software developers talk about pattern, like a factory pattern or a singleton pattern. And what we have here are patterns that are defined steps in order to solve problems. And so you have inputs that go into these steps. And the inputs are, for this reliable web app pattern, things like cost profiles that we have to consider, observability, CI/CD. We're going to use the Azure Dev CLI. We're putting .NET into this, and then finally, everything's built upon the Azure Well-Architected Framework and 12-factor apps. So once all those considerations are put in to this reliable web app pattern, our application is going to exhibit the following characteristics. It'll have reliable service communication. The cache-aside pattern will be implemented to it. It'll be multi-region. It'll have private endpoints, manage secrets, and so on. You can read everything that's down the side there. The point is here is that the reliable web app pattern not only is a software development pattern, but also is an infrastructure architecture pattern as well. So we're converging on the cloud. Our legacy and tier web application, SQL Server is the back end right now. Our cloud journey is that we are going to apply a reliable web app pattern to make it great, and it's our first step in the cloud journey. So let's define it just a second more. Reliable web app pattern, it addresses the challenges in refactoring a monolithic ASP.NET app with a SQL Server database and making it modern, reliable, scalable ASP.NET Core app. And this pattern, we're going to provide guidance for running a cost-efficient web application in the cloud, and also guidance to meet key objectives that our business partners have set for us. So in essence, the reliable web app pattern is the starting point in the cloud journey. Okay, so we have some key objectives that we want to meet when we do the reliable web app pattern. Some key objectives that the reliable web app pattern is going to help us meet. First off, we're going to focus on low-cost, high-value wins. So as I mentioned, we are going to be dealing with an existing end-tier or monolith application. So we're going to tweak that a little bit, and what we're going to tweak is going to help us hit these low-cost, high-value wins. We're going to do more with less. we're going to follow the principles that are laid out in the Azure Well-Architected Framework principles. Now, these principles were developed by very smart people. They are out there in applications running on Azure right now, and they work well. So we're going to reuse them and put this into our overall reliable web app pattern. And the idea behind this is that we want to make minimal changes to our existing legacy application. And the changes that we're going to make is that we want to meet security best practices. We want to apply reliability patterns to it. And we also want to improve the overall operational excellence that our application is exhibiting. And we're going to do multi-region deployment to have high availability with our application as well. And we're going to show how to do cost optimized environments because we don't want development to cost as much as production. All right, so the reliable web app pattern is built off of 5 different pillars, as I like to call it. So the first pillar is reliability. So reliability ensures that your app can meet the commitments that you make to your customers. It's reliable. That's why it's the first pillar. It is named after the reliable web app pattern. The second pillar is security. So modern application development is complex, and security is something that keeps on evolving. And so our attack vectors, they increase. And we really just have to take that into mind. And we have to make sure that we provide assurances both to our customers, both to our managers, to ourselves, that we want to have our app that maintains confidentiality, maintains integrity, and it just has a nice overall architecture for security. Cost optimization. We want to make sure that we are not spending a lot of money in duplicating efforts, anything like that. We want to balance business goals with the budget. Operational excellence. So what this covers is processes that keep an application running in production. Things like automated deployments, repeatable deployments, or even the ability to back a deployment out of production just in case we introduce a bug. And then performance efficiency. Now, this is the ability to have a workload scale to meet the user demands in an efficient manner. So, and the trick here is to be able to anticipate when the demands will come, and then be able to react fast enough, or even have code built in that automatically reacts. And when I say code, I'm talking both infrastructure as code and code that we have in our application. All right, so each of these 5 pillars, they just didn't come from anywhere. They are actually part of the Azure Well-Architected Framework. And so when we build up the reliable web app pattern, we're not implementing the entire Azure Well-Architected Framework. Rather, we're taking the pieces that make sense for reliable web apps and implementing them. Also, we relied on the 12-factor applications methodology, which is a methodology to build software as a service apps in the cloud, and we implemented things from that to inform the reliable web app pattern. All right, so overall, I've been talking about the pattern all the time. However, we're not going to just provide sample code for it. We're not going to talk through it. We are actually going to provide deliverables so you can implement this pattern on your own. And one of those deliverables is going to be a reference implementation of a reliable web app. The whole thing, from start to finish, not just sample code, but an entire web application that you could deploy to production today. Even infrastructure as code. You could provision it, it'll have security set up, it'll have private networks, and all the code, all of the .NET code needed to run the application. You could take bits and pieces out as examples to implement into your own code base, but it's the full thing, ready to go. We're also going to provide prescriptive practices, prescriptive guidance, and best practices along with this. So this video, this series of videos, is just the introduction. You can think of these videos as the movie trailer to the movie that's going to be the background documentation and the reference web app that's coming along with it. So the reliable web app pattern, it's huge. It's these videos. It's going to be a reference application that you could deploy, that you can take a look at and see how things are done. And it's also going to be prescriptive guidance that goes through and describes why we made certain decisions that we did. All right, so let's see the application that we are going to make reliable. And it's called Relic Cloud Concerts. Here's our application. Now you can think of this as a line of business application, and what it is that customers call into a call center and then they request the ability to book concert tickets. So you can see the various information about the concert, where it's happening, the cost, and then the call center folk is able to add tickets to a shopping cart. So the overall idea behind this is that we wanted to go ahead and make something that was familiar to most people, where the concepts behind it, a shopping cart, the ability to look, pull info from a database, right to a database, would be familiar to most people who are going to go through you and look at the reference application and read the prescriptive guidance. So when I go through and I purchase the ticket, it's actually going out and writing an image to Azure Storage, and I can have my barcode. I'm also logged into Azure Active Directory. So this is an internal app acting as a line of business application where I'm logged into Azure Active Directory and reading data, writing data, and so on. So the idea behind this overall is line of business, reading, writing data, that's our SQL server, and then also seeing images being pulled from Azure Storage. All right, so you can go out and get the code for this at aka.ms/EAP for enterprise patterns /RWA for reliable web app /.NET, because we're dealing with nothing but .NET in this series of videos. EAP/RWA/.NET. That will not only get you the code that you just saw running, but it'll also provide the prescriptive guidance and the best practices where we talk through why we made the decisions, what we did, for when we did. Here's a quick look at the reference architecture that we made for the Relic Cloud Concerts app. As you can see, it's not just a website talking to SQL Server any longer. It's a whole lot more. And the reason is we did not skip on any of the hard stuff. None of the complexities are hidden away. Azure App Config is here, Azure Key Vault, Azure Entra ID, Azure Front Door. The monolithic website is now broken up into two pieces, a front end and a back end. And it's all using the hub and spoke architecture, where applications are the spoke and they plug into a common services within the hub. Azure App Insights is used to monitor the overall application. Azure SQL Database and App Redis Cache are used to store data and are separated from the public internet, so only apps can get at it and not the public internet. And we're able to deploy into multiple regions too, should you want to. While the previous architecture diagram showed you the complexity of the hub and spoke architecture network security, here's a simplified diagram for developers that helps you understand the multi-region deployment with respect to the monolithic application. So let's see just that on how to deploy the application. All right, I have the reliable web app pattern.net repository already opened. It's at aka.ms/EAP/RWA. From here, I'll scroll on down to start getting the instructions on how to install this. In the repo, there is tons of information, including the architecture diagram of what we just talked about, a workflow of how the traffic flows and various information like session state management and how the user authentication works, all in here. But what we're really interested in this step is how to deploy the application. I'm going to use WSL and dev containers. And I'll get into why it's so great too. But if you wanted to just do everything outside of a dev container, let's say if you wanted to go just pure Visual Studio route, or if you just didn't like using dev containers for some reason, click on the dependencies link, which will open up this tab, and then make sure you have all of the prerequisites installed. So let's go through and install RWA via a dev container. And the reason why I like dev containers so much is because everything comes with it. I don't really have to worry about installing any of the prerequisites because it all comes within my container itself. All I really need is WSL on my system and Docker. So first off, what I'm going to do is I have PowerShell open, but I'm just going to go right into my WSL installation, move into my home directory, and then start working. Rearrange my windows a little bit. And then next thing I want to do is git clone. So copy down all the code from the Reliable Web App Pattern, and then I am going to change my directory into it. So far, so good. So this next step is actually really cool. I am working within the Windows subsystem for Linux, but I am going to just issue the command code, period, to open up Visual Studio Code within Windows. And so by doing this, I am actually connecting to my WSL system, but within Visual Studio Code, which is running on Windows itself. All right, I'm also going to want to make sure I am opening it in a container so I can get all of the prerequisites, things like such as .NET and AZD, Azure Developer CLI, and the Azure CLI installed, and it's going to be all installed in my container. So I'll click on the open in container and let that run. It'll take a little bit, and make sure you have Docker desktop running while this goes. Great. So once everything has loaded up, you'll see in the lower left-hand corner of Visual Studio Code, it says dev container :web-app-pattern-.net. That means I'm up and I'm running in my dev container. So next step, I want to actually go ahead and deploy all of this to Azure. So I'm going to open up a terminal window, which I can do through here, the terminal menu, new terminal, and then continue on with the directions from the GitHub repo. Scroll down and let's start logging into Azure. First thing we're going to do is copy over to PowerShell, like so. And away we go. I'm running now PowerShell in a dev container. And I'm just going to go through, copy everything. All right. Sometimes you might see this. So we might have to run, instead of connect-az account, also say, hey, use device authentication. At which point it'll tell me to open up a website and use this code to authenticate, which we can most definitely do. Enter that code, and we'll confirm our user account. And I'll jump back here, and you'll see a bunch of warnings. That's just because I have a lot of Azure tenants associated to my account, and we shouldn't worry about those at all. All right, so once we made it through, we want to go ahead and then find out what Azure subscription we want. As we just saw, I have a bunch of different Azure subscriptions associated to my account. So I can run the git-az subscription PowerShell command to find the ones I have. Then I will set it to an environment variable called Azure_subscription_ID equals my subscription ID. And this way, I can access that as any other environment variable then, by setting the AZ context. And then finally, logging in to Azure with the Azure Developer CLI. All right, I am now logged in. We'll clear things out so we can start seeing them more easily. The next step then is to create a new AZD environment. So AZD is how we are going to deploy our application. We're going to provision all the Azure resources with it and deploy the code with it. So AZD env new, we'll just want to give it a name here. So I'm going to say RWA -mat and give it a date. Next up, I'm going to set up the subscription ID. And then finally, we're going to pick a region. And there could be many, many different Azure regions to deploy to. So first, what I want to do is I'm going to run get AZ location dot location so I can see all the different Azure region locations and then pick one that's closest to me because they all have very specific names. And so I know I'm going to want to use East US, but there are many, many. So you probably would just want to use the ones that is closest to you physically. And then it's going to be AZD env set Azure location. So we're setting up a bunch of environment variables here. And then finally, we're just doing AZD up. And what AZD up will do is provision all the Azure resources and deploy the code. And this will take a while to run, possibly up to 20 minutes. So sit back, relax, and we'll be right back after it runs. Once everything is done deploying, you'll get a couple of URLs that you can go to, including the front end, the back end, but also more importantly, this front door URL that you can click on, go to visit your Relay Cloud Concerts application. And here everything is up and running. Now, if we were to go over to visit the Azure portal, we'll be able to see the resource group as well that has been deployed with all the Azure resources within it. And with this one being called RWA mat 14 MAR, and then we also gave it a suffix of dev East US application for everything else to go along with it as well. And we can see all of the services that were deployed inside that application, including a storage account, a SQL database, Azure Cache for Redis, and the various app services as well. So they are all out there. And now if I run back to VS Code, I'm still running within my dev container. So if I change my directory to the source, and then let's say I go over to relaycloud.web.callcenter.api, and I do .net user-secrets list, I'll be able to see all the user secrets that I need to connect to the cloud and be able to run my application locally as well. So everything has been updated for me locally within the dev container, everything I need to run the application that has been deployed in the cloud, but I can run it locally and connect to those resources. So there we are. We are deployed, running in the cloud. Our local development is set up as well. And I could run it here within VS Code, within a dev container. I could also go and run it within Visual Studio 2 if I had chosen to deploy that way. All right, the code is cloned down to your local machine and deployed up into Azure, including resources and the entire website. So now we're ready to start exploring the reliable web app pattern. And so in the next videos, we're going to dive deeper in each of the pillars, including reliability, security, cost optimization, operational excellence, and performance efficiency, and see what each of those mean for the reliable web app pattern. And again, each of those pillars are pulled from the Azure Well-Architected Framework and the 12-factor applications methodology. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in each one of those videos. Again, my name is Matt Sokup, and I can't wait to go along with this journey with you.